Hello viewers, and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another one of my socioeconomic, philosophic chit chats on CoffeeChillTV. And today, folks, we're going to talk about mortality. We're going to talk about procrastination. We're going to talk about retirement, and I suppose the subheading is, retirement, the drivers and the delayers of retirement. Let's get into it. And folks, just to give you a bit of a time and location marker, it's probably around 10 a.m. It's a little bit fresh this morning, Tuesday morning on the Sunshine Coast, Jessica Park here at Minyama, Badina, Kawana, and yeah, it's the first time I've been to this park, I believe. I've got a nice little spot here to unpack today's discussions. All right. So folks, what I like to do with these channels is reveal to you the impetus, what got me thinking I might make this video log, this vlog today. And there's several little articles I've recently read that are a prompter, and some recent deaths in the news that have also prompted me to make today's video vlog. So folks, let's start with the literature which I recently read and inspired to some degree the making of today's video. I will backfill this vlog with the information to give due credit to the publications and authors. Let me run through there's several articles. Let me run through them with you right now. So the first article is The Dangerous Illusion of Later. Okay. The next, who's that one from? Richard Valentine said all the details will be backfilled. The next article is from a Nikki Osborne, and I quote, "We've got to stop carrying on like tomorrow is promised." And last but not least, we have an article from Bernard Salt. This is the second time I've referenced Bernard as a bit of an inspiration for one of my socioeconomic philosophic chit chats. And this article from Bernard Salt is titled "The Great Unknown. I'm musing about mortality." So there you go, guys. There are the three literature reviews. Well, I'm not going to do full literature reviews on them. I'm just going to extract some points and inspiration, maybe a quote from those in today's video log. Additionally, folks, I've been inspired to make this video following the recent passing of the late great Dennis Lockery, lead singer or co-lead singer of Dr. Hook and the Medicine Man, Ray Sawyer, Dennis Lockery. They were frequent visitors to Australia. They had a huge amount of commercial success, 70s and 80s, and just one of my all-time favourite bands. And Dennis Lockery, when he passed, he was in his mid-70s, I believe, and I was chatting to a friend just last week. We were teeing up a coffee date, and we just ended up talking about Dennis Lockery. And she said to me, Dave, when I was in, primary school, someone died when they were 75, 76. That was a reasonable innings, but today it seems too young. And I said, yeah, seize the day. Okay, folks, let's go to Bernard Salt first. yeah, he has an interesting statistic in this article. And Bernard Salt is a demographer, so he's a bit of an expert in geographics and demographics, etc. He says that in the article, he says that Australia's peak dying years currently extend from 85 to 89 inclusive. That's inclusive men and women. So, you know, if you're watching this video today and you are in your 90s and you are an Aussie male or female, you've gone above the average dying years, the range. The sobering report, though, is, you know, you want to make the most of your retirement. And yeah, you know, what are the delayers? What are the drivers? What's prompting you to retire now versus later? You know, I don't want to dig too deep into money today. We don't give financial advice anyway on this channel. Money's always omnipresent. Money is always an issue. But I want to talk a little bit about the non-financial, the philosophical side of timing retirement. Do you go hard to the finish line, permanently retire, and you never consider employment again? Do you transition to retirement? Do you go from 5 or 6 days a week to 2 to 3 days a week? You know, what's your plan, guys? I'm going to share a little bit of my story, and as always, I'm interested in your take, your experience. Keep it classy in the comments section. Voila. Folks, this article also talks about loneliness and anxiety as a bit of an issue as well. We'll get into that too. Well, there you go, guys. There's the other end of the life stage, isn't it? You know, I used to be a teacher. I just mentioned it to one of the teachers there. You know, I used to be a teacher. I kind of miss being in the classroom. And yeah, that's going to be something we'll talk about later. You know, what do you miss about work? What don't you miss about work when you're retired? What are you looking forward to not having to do as regards work? We'll get into that as well. All right, folks, so the next article from Nikki Osborne, which is titled "We've Got to Stop Carrying On Like Tomorrow's Promised," and she kind of talks about the perils of delaying retirement. You know, what's the opportunity cost? And, you know, opportunity cost when you take one option over another, and once the opportunity is gone, you can't revisit the, you know, opportunity. In the article, she talks about, you know, maybe people obsess too much over nest eggs, and you know, she sort of extols the virtue of listening to your body. Listen to your body. If you delay retirement, do you delay joy? You know, are you prioritizing work over life? Are you going to miss your main character moment? That's an interesting one as well. So she's trying to play the devil's advocate with herself in this article. And, you know, what is the opportunity cost of delaying retirement? We know the opportunity cost, if you go too early and you haven't got some sort of a nest egg, you know, that can have issues. And sometimes the value of just working another couple of years, so again, I'm not giving financial advice, read the disclaimer in the waiver, but yeah, just working a few more years can get you, you know, your nest egg up a bit. But, you know, listen to your mind, listen to your body. Let's talk about that. So listening to the mind and the body. You know, folks, I remember when I first retired, it's quite a few years ago now, and Sunday nights, sometimes I'll be watching the television and thinking, oh, The Office on Monday. You know, I'd started to lose the passion for the work. Now, there's an old saying that if you enjoy your job, you'll never work a day in your life. So, you know, if you're excited on Sunday night because you're going to bounce into the office on Monday morning, or the factory or the hospital or the school, wherever it is. That's totally different to the person who, like me, towards the end of my finance career, I was kind of like, Monday, I'm not excited about it. Sometimes, depending on what meetings were being scheduled, there was downright dread. So folks, I mentioned transition to retirement. In the Nikki Osborne article, she talks about micro-retirement. She talks about, let's say you're in your 60s and you want to retire. You've just hit 60, you want to retire in your mid-60s. Micro-retirement, little mini breaks in the lead up to retirement. Now, I've got friends who were doing that. They're permanently retired now and very happy. But they were doing that micro-retirement, they were doing some little trips, just sort of ticking a few little boxes off their bucket list before they hit permanent retirement. And both of them also were doing that transition thing. They were kind of, they weren't coming into the office 5-6 days a week. They kind of started to dial it back a little bit. Small steps rather than just bang, whoosh. You were fully employed and now you are fully retired. That the small steps approach. All right, folks, the next article, the dangerous illusion of later. Opportunity cost again. And there's a quote which says, we don't get to spend time twice. The truth really hits us in the ordinary moments of life. And folks, this life is not a dress rehearsal. It's not a dress rehearsal. You don't get one shot at retirement. You only get one shot at this life. Another excellent quote in this article by Richard Valentine is that time doesn't demand perfection, it asks for intention. And when you look back on your life, how do we choose to spend our time while we were here? And it's not about living to be 105, maybe living to 85, you have a more fulfilling life. It's an interesting philosophical one, guys. Intention, intention and purpose in retirement. I think it's important. So folks, what drove me to retirement? And it wasn't all about the money. Yes, the money's important. I'm an ex-finance guy. I crunched some numbers, some scenarios. The thing though, when you do that, guys, is retirement is not a straight line of spending. Okay, you might spend a lot when you first retire. You might get into cruise mode for a few years, and then later in life, health issues, whatever else. It's very rarely a straight line, linear process. So when you're on the computer and you're mucking around with financial modeling, you need to sort of understand that. But for me, I sort of looked at some numbers because I would do that, but it was that there were reasons far stronger than numbers when I first retired, and I'm retired permanently at the moment as well. For me, folks, I kind of hit the wall, the proverbial wall. You see marathon runners, and they're coming down to the last few kilometres and just lactic acids and whatever else. When it comes to our jobs in our career, some of us also hit the wall. I kind of did. I was that Sunday night dreading to come in on a Monday morning. I kind of, it stopped being exciting. And that was a non-financial driver for my retirement. Conversely though, if I was still loving that job, regardless of the numbers, I probably would have kept going, even just another couple of years. But I kind of mentally moved on, and it was like, the non-financial driver, it was there front and center. So what happened next? I went and got like a 6-month tourist visa to Thailand, and you know, I went over to Laos in the middle of it all, and you know, I sort of, I don't know, mooching around, Chomtian. As I noted in one of my earlier videos, Udon Thani, a little big town story, I sort of switched from seaside, which is often the kind of cliche, you know, draw me a picture of retirement. It often involves the ocean or a sea, or a lakeside. Yeah, I moved from seaside to, you know, the interior, and that video, which you can find in the back catalogue, Udon Thani, a little big town story, you know, talks about that journey. That video also talks about the fact that, you know, maybe I did retire a little bit too early. I got a bit bored, so I sort of did some volunteer work, and then the volunteer work, just one day someone suggested there might be a job going at a local school, and so I came out of retirement a boomerang retiree, and there's plenty of those around. So folks, I just had a great chat to a local retired gentleman, and I asked him if I could, you know, ask him a question. And I'm not going to name him by name, but I asked him, you know, what drove you to finally retire? And he said, oh, a relationship breakdown. He just wanted to get away. There you go. So, and you know, he's been enjoying his retirement for a couple of years on the Sunshine Coast, and yeah, we talked about what we liked about this place. You know, he's also been a tourist in Thailand, and we spoke about what we like about Thailand too. So it was a great little chat, and this is an important thing, folks. Social connections, even just a friendly chat with a random stranger, you know, can just kind of break up the, you know, that loneliness, anxiety issue that was mentioned earlier as well. So there you go, guys. There's a non-financial reason that some people retire. A relationship goes south, and maybe there's an association with work, location, and you think you just want to kind of get away, you just want to retire. So yeah, he said he's happy for me to reference that. There you go. I won't say any more details about the gent, but lovely bloke to chat to, originally from Germany, on a beautiful, although a little bit frosty, Tuesday morning on the Sunshine Coast. Voila. Folks, we're going to wrap it up here. The drivers, the delayers. We didn't really get into money today. We're not getting into that. Just what drove you to finally retire? If you're retired, what was the final that sort of led you to pull the pin on work and start your retirement? And any other relevant musings, put them in the comments box, guys. And hey, as always, cheers for watching CoffeeChillTV. Let's see you in the next one. All the best.